Welcome to Wax On, Wax Off, the podcast where a teenager gains wisdom and insight from pioneers and innovators that have come before in search of how to win in every facet of life and change the world. I am your host, Solomon Cole, and let's get right into today's episode. So, today's episode, I get to talk to the amazing Daimon Bowen Ashwin. He is a life coach, and he's just an overall fascinating human being. He coaches many people, but specifically people in tough situations, but more specifically, people with terminal illnesses. And he has a brain tumor, and his story is just amazing on how he found healing and not only just living with the fact that he has a tumor, but loving it and this relationship of love with his tumor. It's just absolutely mind-blowing. He has trained under Wim Hof, which I can't wait to get into that with him and talk about the enigma and amazing human being that Wim Hof is. And I'm just so excited for you to get to hear this amazing conversation. So if you could, real quick, go to the Patreon, patreon.com/waxonwaxoffpodcast, and subscribe. It's only $5 a month, and you get so many amazing things. You get private access to me. You get episodes early. You're going to get exclusive content. And you also just get to support a young entrepreneur on his journey and see the fruits of your donation and your support in my podcast and in this journey that we are all in together. I want to be finding out what guests do you want to have on the podcast? Do you want to be on the podcast? All of these things. And I really want to create this amazing community where we are centered around leveling up as a generation, as humanity, and as people. So without further ado, here's my amazing episode with Daimon Bowen Ashwin. Alrighty, so number one, Daimon, I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast, for being here, and for sharing your wisdom with us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So I want to start off the podcast asking, what do you do and why do you do it?
I'm helping people take control of their minds and bodies and believe themselves, I guess, in short. Yeah, really increase that self-belief and realize that we are really powerful beings, but we just haven't been told that growing up. And why I do it, I guess I've had my eyes opened, and now that I've learned so much more, it kind of just feels wrong not to share it with the world. And I've seen what I've learned over the last few years and how it's helped me become who I am now. And look, I'm going to keep growing, hopefully, but it's helped me kind of shift my mindset to one where I really think that we can, in fact, I believe like really passionately that we can do anything. And I mean, absolutely anything if we put our minds to it. Yeah. We just need to create the right conditions. Yeah. And if you have that belief, then why wouldn't you share it? You know, and or if you've got the kind of if you've got some proof, why wouldn't you kind of show it to the world and see what good you can do?
Yeah, I love what you said about kind of having the wisdom yourself, because to teach, you have to also have done it yourself. I think the best teachers are the ones who practice what they're preaching or what they're teaching. And I was on this journey of self-development, of growing, of trying to learn as many things as possible and gain as much wisdom as possible. And on this journey, I was like, I feel a little selfish, like keeping this to myself. I want to share this with people. I want to give this to people. So I was like, I'm having these conversations either way. Why not just press the record button and just see how this goes? And hopefully it impacts people. And I know it is. And I'm happy that you listeners are here getting to hear the amazing story of all these people. The next question is, what got you onto your path of being a coach and being a Wim Hof instructor?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, very good question. A health scare ultimately. About 4 years ago, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and it gave me a bit of a nudge, to say the least. It scared the crap out of me, which won't come as any surprise to anyone listening or watching. And it was, I guess, it was timing as well. I'd Because I'd been in a really good place in 2019, and I'd been growing my recruitment business, and I felt like I was reading a lot of self-improvement books, and I thought, I'm in a good place, but I was having these amnesia episodes, and they kept happening more and more. And at first, I just thought I was a bit stressed. I'm running my own business, and I'm getting closer to 40, so maybe it's just stress, and didn't really think maybe there's a little chemical imbalance or something. So I didn't really think too much about it until it got a lot worse, and I had the scans, and the diagnosis just before Christmas 2019 came back and said, well, you have a brain tumor.
Wow.
The good news is it's low grade, it's slow growing, but the bad news is it's pretty big, and we kind of need to do something about it, really. Because what we do know about these things based on past experiences, that they're slow growing now, but they like to kind of creep up and get into kind of fast growing mode. And we don't, at the time, they said, we don't really know what determines that. Now, I think I do know a bit more about that now, but at the time I didn't. So it was enough of a scare to kind of go, something needs to change in my life. But it wasn't too much of it. It wasn't, you've got weeks or months to live. It was, this is serious, but we can help you out here. And I think luckily COVID happened, because that almost gave me the excuse I got in for the operation in February 2020, and the operation was a process of debulking as much as they could, and then I'd be left with a residual mass, and we just kind of monitor that for life and kind of wait and see, kind of hope. I was like, that bit I didn't really like. But then COVID came along, March 2020, just a month after the op. And because it's almost like the market shut down, particularly the recruitment market I was in, I was recruiting architects at the time. And that shut down, and I just thought, this is the time to kind of do something. No one's recruiting, this is time to kind of keep, and I was probably feeling good from the operation that it had gone well and had a new tint to life, and thinking, well, yeah, let's get on this road. And I thought I found a coaching program that was founded on kind of quantum physics and coaching kind of meeting each other based on the fact that we're all energy. If you put everyone and everything under a microscope, you're energy. I was like, and they had this statement on the website that said, our mission is to change the world one conscious mind at a time. And all the other websites I'd been for the coaching programs had been kind of sell, and they were kind of very kind of corporate-y, and this one felt like personal development. It was like you could go into it and you didn't have to come out a coach. You could have just learned how to be, a better individual, learn how to communicate better, learn more about yourself, and just grow in confidence. So I kind of liked that because it gave me choices, and it also meant that I could kind of sit on the fence a bit and think, am I ready for coaching, or do I want to stay in recruitment? Or it kind of gave me choices, but also it suited me where I was at the time. So that started the first bit. And then the Wim Hof method didn't come in until about a year and a half later. So I'd had a couple of scans. They'd all gone kind of fairly well in terms of after surgery, they hadn't kind of grown any. And then it got to about a year and a half. It was June 2021. And there'd been some growth. So the big thing that I'd been fearing all this time and hadn't really addressed or answered, and maybe I just wasn't ready to address or answer, just going to give myself a bit of credit. But that came true. So all of a sudden my kind of world came crashing down, and I was in pieces. I was thinking, I'd literally just turned 40, and I thought, I just remember sitting outside in my parents' garden, crying my eyes out, looking at my mum going, I don't think I'm going to live to see 50. And I had no reason to say it. No one had said to me, we don't think you're going to live 10 years or whatever it is. But I just had that something in my mind, and it was just, it was a pretty dark time. But and that lasted for about 4 weeks, maybe a little bit more. I can't give or take. And during that time, so I was now a coach, and I just opened my coaching business as this new diagnosis kind of came into my life. So I had kind of some tools, and I had some beliefs that the mind is powerful, and we are what we think. But this was a whole new. That's all very well if you're just dealing with a difficult person, or the mortgage or whatever it is, something stressing you in your life. But when it comes to an illness, it's like a life-threatening illness. How the hell do I do that one? So I knew I had the tools, and I knew somewhere in the back of my mind was a little phrase that eventually started coming through saying, we can do anything if we put our minds to it. We just need to create the right conditions. We are what we think. But I hadn't got there yet. So at the beginning of the summer, June, I was absolutely petrified. And I remember waking up one morning and thinking, and I'd forgotten everything. And I woke up and it was sunny. I was like, oh. And then I remembered, and it kind of hit me in the heart. I was like,
yeah,
just sent me into a bit of a spiral. But at the same time, I guess I was looking and hoping for a bit of inspiration, and I found some towards, after kind of a month or so. I found two things. One of them was a book called Radical Remission by a doctor called Kelly Turner, and it's called Radical Remission: The 9 Key Factors That People Who Survive Cancer Against the Odds Have in Common. And I looked at this book, and it had testimonials in, or kind of stories to kind of back up, and it was kind of a step-by-step guide as to kind of the 9. It was a practical guide. But of these 9 key factors, they were all accessible. One was change your diet, one was use herbs and supplements, and the other 7 were mental, emotional, and spiritual, like letting go of negative emotions, creating positive emotions, taking control of your health, trusting your intuition, embracing social support, things that were really easily accessible. And there were some stories in there of these people who'd been given months to live and just turned things around just by meditating or singing or just tapping into their passion, things that made them really happy. And I was like, wow, that kind of got me started. And in the process of that, I also found Wim Hof, and I was just reading about this guy who'd been injected with endotoxin, which is a dead bacteria. And usually when you're injected with an endotoxin, I mean, I don't advise it, but when they do science experiments, people are usually, if they haven't done any preparation, then the usual response is diarrhea, vomiting, fever, flu-like symptoms, headaches, nausea. It's not pleasant, and it only lasts for kind of 3 or 4 hours, I think, and then it will work its way out your system. But it's not nice. But this guy Wim Hof was injected with it, and all he was doing was a breathing technique and meditation, and he managed to have no reaction. In fact, he got a slight headache at one point, then it went away, and he had no reaction to it. And they took his blood away and were trying to figure out what's going on, and they saw that he didn't have any inflammatory proteins, but he was suppressing inflammation just by the mind. And I was like, okay, that shows the power of the mind, and something as simple as the breath. I need some of this. And if he can do that and suppress an endotoxin, then maybe that's something that I can tap into as well. And he keeps talking about reducing inflammation, and he kept saying at the heart of every disease, no matter what it is, how serious it is inflammation. So if we reduce inflammation at the core, then surely that's going to kind of help me in some way. So it just it helped me mentally believe in something. So it took me from the beginning of the summer thinking, shit, I'm 40, am I going to live to see 50? To 4 or 6 weeks later thinking, you know what, this could be a bit of fun. This could be my chance to kind of shine, and I'm getting excited about this. Like, I'm going to learn all this new stuff, and maybe it's a little challenge and I was looking at it in a completely different way. Exactly the same world, but how I was perceiving and experiencing the world had changed. So this was still kind of growing a little bit, and, the world around me was still the same, but how I was thinking and feeling was completely different. And that was a real game changer. That was like the moment of like, shit, it really is how we experience the world, or how we can change. If you want to change the world, change the way you look at it. And that might sound really far-fetched, or it might sound like I'm simplifying things, but if you can get to that place, then that's when the magic happens.
Tony Robbins said one time, you don't experience life, you experience the life you focus on. And I think our focus and our belief is so important in the way that we experience the world. I think it is the way we experience the world. We experience the
Mm.
world as we want to experience it. And people feel like sometimes that they're trapped, or the world, like life is living them instead of them living life.
Mm.
And they feel trapped and they feel stuck. And I mean, you're just an amazing example of someone who was like just living your life, and then you got this not the best spin, just to say the least of it. And
Mm.
you said, I have a bad hand right now. I'm going to change this into a good hand. Actually, this isn't even a bad hand. This is a great hand. I'm happy with this. And I really want to get into you talking about how, how did you, how did you not just learn to live with a brain tumor, but learn to love it?
Yeah, the second bit was a bit harder, and that came
Yeah.
eventually. But the learn to live with it bit was, I think I just started getting excited by the science behind things like the Wim Hof method and
Mm-hmm.
all these stories. There's proof out there. So I was like, if there's proof, then that means if one person can do it, then, that's all we need. And, maybe I can be that. I wasn't even thinking maybe I can be one of the stats. I was like, I don't want to know about the stats. I'm just going to try and be me. And
Yeah.
I know that stress causes our bodies to kind of shut off the defense mechanism, because in that moment it's thinking that we're facing a tiger. So it's like from our prehistoric days. So the immune system shuts down because it's like, do you want energy to run away from danger, or do you want to have your immune system working? You can't have both.
Mm-hmm.
So when we get stressed, we get sick. Also, if it's prolonged, and I guess that's probably what happened to me. That's why I kind of did get ill in the first place. But I'm quite aware. Have I answered your questions? Your question was, how did I learn to live with it? Was the first part.
How
I'm going
did
to
you
try.
learn to live with it? And then not just going from, I'm just going to live with this every day, just like kind of get by, but you learn to thrive and you learn to love this thing that is assumedly negative or scary.
Mm. Yeah, I think I just started getting excited, and I had the hope and the inspiration there, but it almost felt like a kind of a calling. I was like, well, maybe this. If I'm being really honest, there's not much up until that point. I hadn't really been that proud of myself in life. I'd always do okay, but I know
Mm-hmm.
that I'd never really put 100% into everything. I'd always hold a little bit back, and I've kind of gone through life, and I'd had a good life, but it wasn't. I don't think I could ever kind of hand on heart say I can look back and go, yeah, I'm really proud of everything I've done. And yeah, but this came along, and this second bit, I guess, once I'd kind of got used to it and got the inspiration and the hope and the proof and things like the Wim Hof method, it's like I just created this new me, this kind of new confident, strong me, going, "Hey, I'm gonna, I'm gonna show myself," and in doing so, other people get to watch that I'm gonna have radiotherapy and chemo for a year, but in doing that, I'm gonna practice the Wim Hof method all the way through it and work on my mindset and just focus on love, love, love. I just think love's an energy and it heals us. And if I
Mm-hmm.
can do that I mean, it'd be amazing if the thing shrinks and goes away and I don't ever have to deal with it again. But it just gave me a purpose, I guess. Yeah, it
Yeah.
gave me a purpose, and it's when I got excited by it, and I wanted to kind of step into this role of like, it's like I created a new person of like, okay, now's my chance to shine, and it made me feel good. Kind of, I
Mm-hmm.
set up a YouTube channel, so I called it the Radio and Chemical Diaries, radiotherapy and chemotherapy, kind of the Radio and Chemical Diaries, the power of positivity, and it just made me feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought there's lots of other people out there who are on some sort of cancer journey. Maybe they'll watch this and they'll get a bit of hope and inspiration. They can read Radical Emissions. They can read about the Wim Hof method and just try a few other things that might really surprise them about how powerful they are and how much it might kind of help them change their world and their diagnosis. And yeah, so I guess yeah, it gave me a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I really bought into it. And once you believe in something, I guess that was at the heart of it. If I hadn't been inspired enough by Wim Hof and the radical emissions and people like Anita Moorjani, she has an amazing story. She was absolutely riddled with cancer, and she has a book out. She's a big public speaker now, in the field of health, and she was riddled with cancer. The doctors were literally about to turn off the machine on her, and she had this what's it called, out of body experience, kind of near death experience, where and she came back from it, and she felt the love of the world, and she felt unconditional love, I guess.
Mm.
And within weeks, her tumors were kind of just dissolving and disappearing, and the doctors were thinking, "What the hell's going on here?" So I had all this kind of proof out there,
Yeah.
and it felt like it was accessible, and it felt like it was real, and that no one had said fly to or up to Cambridge or fly to the US and get the best medical treatment in the world. They were saying, breathe, change your diet, take control of your mind, and start to create a new belief system, and maybe do some cold exposure as well as the breathing, and with the Wim Hof method. And all these things were really accessible, and it felt like I just bought into them. And it felt like they were powerful, and it felt, I guess I just believed. And once you believe, it's quite hard to, something can come along and shake that, and every now and then it does, because that's just life. You have a little week if you're a bit tired, or it's the end of the year, or you've got a cold. But generally, yeah, I just have this belief now that, and the science is there backing up with so many different people, whether it's Wim Hof, whether it's Dr. Joe Dispenza and his meditation kind of programs, linking the heart and the mind through meditation, and people just within the space of 7 days healing themselves from MS, from cancer, from all of these kind of chronic, supposedly incurable diseases. And the scientists are there saying, let me just check that again. I know this is happening. And then they're doing scans on the brain, thinking, what's happening in the brain? And understanding that when we can almost sync our brains and get into a certain brainwave, and connect that with our heart, and ultimately take control of our minds in a really pure state, cut out all the crap, get rid of all that white noise that kind of comes in, and just focus on being powerful, or believing in yourself and the universe, and that if you ask for it, it will come. That it happens. And there's so much proof out there now that my eyes are open. I just want to kind of spread the word and do my bit to kind of show out other people who are struggling. And whether it's struggling with a cancer diagnosis, whether it's MS, Parkinson's, or whether it's just someone who's really struggling mentally, because the mental and the physical worlds are one and the same thing. So if it's a physical disease, it's a mental disease. If it's a mental disease, it is a physical disease. It's they are. We talk about in society a lot about the mind and the body, and it's like they're separate things.
Yeah.
Like, well, hang on a minute. There's a massive spinal column, your big nervous system, that runs down intricately and very. The proof's there. It's connecting your body and your brain.
Yeah.
Why are we talking about them as if they're two different things? And so that's the real kind of eye opener for me now. It's like, well, we just have to think what we want. And I know there's a lot of stuff to get in the way, but the more you train and train mentally, then we can take control of our minds and our bodies. And then the world's your oyster.
Yeah. I think my dad always says mental health is physical health, and they're intertwined, and they go back and forth. He showed me this diagram one time, and it was a Venn diagram, and it was two circles, and then the inside was health, like true health, and it said mental health, physical health, but they're intertwined, they're linked like a chain, and they're together, and they're two separate entities, but they're also linked together, and they have this intertwining. And I think there's a level of maybe spiritual, and we could call that maybe our belief, maybe that's a mental thing as well, I want to get into, you talked about belief
Mm.
and how powerful as humans our beliefs are. How important are our beliefs, and is there a limit to what we can achieve through our beliefs? And what have you found in your life through testing the limits of belief?
Mm. I think the sky's the limit. I think we are what we think, and I caveat that with a little bit of we're also human, and that doesn't mean don't ever have a negative thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
As an example, I've got a scan coming up tomorrow for my 6th monthly check-in. I'm fairly sure I feel good. I'm fairly sure everything will be fine. If there has been a little bit of growth, which I really doubt, I know I've got the tools to deal with it. But in the
Yeah.
build up to this last week, I've had a few doubts here go on in my mind just because you get a bit tired and it's like, oh. But so you're allowed to have that. That doesn't mean just
Mm-hmm.
because you've had a couple of negative thoughts that those thoughts own you and they're going to suddenly make something appear from nothing, or that they are the future or even the present. They're just thoughts. So we are what we think. The mind is amazingly powerful, and if we put it to use, it can achieve anything. And I really do mean anything. Like, I know I can heal through just visualization and positive thoughts. But you're allowed to be human and slip up and have 10% or even 20% of your thoughts that are negative. It's the
Yeah.
ability to let go of those thoughts.
Mm-hmm. And
And
have grace for yourself with those thoughts and say, it's okay that I'm feeling this and this is normal.
yeah.
Because I know a lot of people would have shame around that and they'd be like, why am I doing this? I need to have positive thoughts. I need to have a positive belief. Why am I having these thoughts? And then they're stressed out and they're having more negative thoughts about their negative thoughts. It's
Yeah.
okay. Hold space for that. Like everything is
Mm,
as it should be. And if you're feeling stressed out or you're feeling scared, that's normal. That's just human life. But hold
absolutely.
space for it, accept it, and then in the acceptance, it dissipates.
Mm. Yeah, and once you kind of lean into something, I think that word's great. Well, I love the fact that you said give yourself grace as well. But coming back to that acceptance part,
Mhm.
what I didn't do in the first year and a bit was accept really where I was. I'd kind of had the tumor removed or most of it, but I wasn't really properly facing it or accepting it. Once you do face things and accept them, they start to change a bit. And it feels scary at first, but then they do. And you can get to, I don't know how I'm going to explain this, but you can get to a phase where the thing that you're really scared of, you can almost think about it too much, or just think, well, what am I actually, if you keep digging, what am I scared of? I'm scared of dying. Yeah, but you're not dead yet. What am I scared of? I'm scared of it growing. Well, it's not growing yet. What am I scared? And you keep digging and digging and realize that all the things that you're scared of haven't actually happened. And some of the things that you're scared of have happened, but that doesn't necessarily mean to say that all is doomed or that there's no way of reversing or no way out of it. So that you can get to a place where I think, well, you said earlier on actually, that where the fear kind of dissolves,
Mhm.
um, and you push through and something else starts to happen. And that's the bit I can't explain. I don't know what happens then. Maybe that is spirituality, maybe that's self-belief, I don't know, or universal belief.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting what you're talking about, like kind of doing like how they would do it with a car. They would do a diagnostic and they're seeing like
Mm,
what's wrong, what's going on here, what's happening. Um, is this out of whack? Is this out of whack? What's going on? And they figure out and you look and you're like, well, it's and you're looking inside of yourself and you're saying, what's inside of myself that maybe isn't aligned? What needs to be tweaked just a little bit?
mm,
And because one thing in a car can make the whole car not run. Not It's not everything is broken. It's just one little thing. And I think when you look in yourself and you say, why am I stressed out? Well, maybe I need to tweak my view on this. Why am I worried about this? Maybe I need to tweak my
mm,
view on that. And you really look within ourselves. And I think our culture and the world today we don't have time to look within ourselves, and people are scared to be with their own thoughts now because they can just put a podcast on or listen to music or
mm,
do whatever, and they're constantly running away from being with themselves. So I think it's also like you can listen to podcasts like mine, and you can gain wisdom from it, but you also need to have that time set aside from yourself and sit and like think about what do I believe? Like, are my beliefs positive? Am I aligned with my goals?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's I definitely resonate with that. And there's something out of balance when we are either when we're sick or when we're getting stressed.
Hmm.
Something's out of balance, and it's not always a bad thing. Getting stressed is a sign that something needs to change. So it is a signal to us. That's the kind of the positive part to it. Um,
Hmm.
I think something that, as you were talking, kind of crept up for me was emotions. So we get stressed, we get scared, and we have emotions. And I think it's when we don't deal with those emotions that we start to fight them or push them down or do something with them. But
Mm.
actually, just sitting with them and letting them out, they start to. The best way I remember after surgery, I was kind of every now and then I'd just get these wave of emotions come through me. It's kind of the shock, the fear, the release, the relief. That I'm still here and everything all in once. And it wasn't actually scary. It was a very weird sensation. I don't get it as much anymore, probably because I'm in a very different place. But I used to get these wave of emotions, and I'd just sit there and cry and let it out. And then after it finished, there would be this, like after there's been a thunderstorm and you go outside and there's that kind of clearness in the air or something. It's like the storm's just going to go on, and emotions are the same. If we can, and not everyone has to cry, but we have to let them flow, or we have to let them
Hmm.
out somewhere. Um, and because emotions are meant to flow, and we're not meant to, we are emotional beings. But earlier on, did you mention, or did you say something along the lines of, well, I think it's, for me, it's our ability to respond to life. And
Yeah.
so we're going to have emotions when we get scared, when we get fearful, when we have doubts, when, all through life. But if we can then respond to those emotions, and that may not happen overnight, it might be a couple of days, or it might be a month, or even a 3 month process. But when we get to the position where we can start realizing and responding to our emotions, going, okay, I'm going to accept you. Now I've accepted you. I need to process you. Processing can be, then you might have to face a little challenge, or it might mean you just think, I don't need to give this any energy anymore. I just need to let this go. I mean, there's
Hmm.
probably a lot of stuff in our lives, that a lot of past thoughts that we can let go of. And
Yeah. I think there's so many things that you said that were amazing. Starting off with the emotions thing, I think we as people, especially men, but everyone, I think, struggles with releasing their emotions, and they think um, emotion is weakness or emotion is like instability. Emotion is it was there, it's there for a reason, and
mm,
if you're not letting your emotions out and you're holding it up and you're bottling it up and you're just like shoving it under the bed and like not looking at it, at some point, I talked to my friend a long time ago, and she was struggling with emotions and letting her emotions out because she thought it was weakness. And what I said was, I was like, it's like having like a piece of trash, right? And you have this and you're like, I need to throw it away, like I need to let it out of me, but instead you're just like, I'm just gonna like throw it under my bed. And I'm like, at some point you're drowning, your room's covered in trash and you're like underneath all the trash, and that's what happens to people. And then at some point someone's gonna open the door and it's all gonna flow out and it's gonna hurt them. And we're out of whack. We're both emotionally, and we can be also a I don't know what the logical, I guess, would be the opposite of that. And if we are not emotional and we're not letting the emotions out, there's a time and a place to be emotional. There's also a time and a place to be a realist and be like, we have to
mm,
buckle down and get this done.
yeah,
But I think when you figure out that it's like, I can cry, it's okay. And it feels good
mm,
to cry sometimes. Sometimes you need to cry. And sometimes you need to let some of the stuff that you've been holding on to go.
yeah,
But there's
abs-
also a time and place to be logical and say, we need to do this. I need to make a plan. I need to do this. I
mm,
can't just be feeling and wandering around like lackadaisically running in the field, being like, oh, look at all the butterflies and stuff. There's also both, it's a both and, it's a balance between the two.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love what you just said, and it, yeah, rings so true with me. It's whether it's crying or whether it's getting angry about something and letting it out as opposed to kind of holding it in.
Mhm.
You can then you have to either process it or let it out. Maybe they are one and the same thing before you can get to that stage where you go, okay, right, I'm going to do something practical and logical about this now.
Mhm.
That you can then use it because maybe you get a bit of distance from it. Maybe kind of the letting go creates a bit of space. And that's what allows us to then kind of go, okay, I can put my logical brain back on. How am I going to get out of this one? And or what do I want to do now?
Yeah. Going back to belief, what are 3 pieces of advice you have for people who maybe want to master their mind and use this amazing power of belief to their advantage?
Okay. I'm going to ask you to help me out here in terms of I'm going to do it one by one. So,
Good.
first bit of advice I would say is we need to go easy on ourselves. And you mentioned the word grace earlier on.
Mhm.
Either love yourself or unconditionally. And when you love yourself unconditionally, you give yourself permission to fuck up. To make
Mhm.
mistakes. We're
Yeah.
human. We're meant to make mistakes. There's lots of different guides out there, whether it's the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, or whatever it is, or lots of other self-improvement books. But
Mhm.
ultimately, we need to make, there's no one size fits all kind of guide
Yeah.
that's going to be perfect for everyone. They're just guidelines. So give yourself a break. Remember that you're allowed to make mistakes, and
Mhm.
um, as long as you're trying your best, and trying your best doesn't always mean you're succeeding. And sometimes trying your best means that you're having a bit of a shit day, but the next day you'll be in a better place to try. So just going easy on yourself and giving yourself that permission and space to not be perfect, because none
Mhm.
of us are perfect. We're not meant to be. Otherwise, we'd be robots, and
When
life
you
would be
try and be
pretty
perfect,
boring.
you disappoint yourself.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
if you set
absolutely.
yourself a standard that isn't uh realistic, you're just going to be sad all the time.
Yeah,
And don't set too low of a standard because then you always want to be in a place of growth but not unachievable growth.
yeah, and yeah, perfect. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just getting too attached to the idea
Mhm.
of perfectionism, and it's just unhealthy,
Yeah.
and that causes stress in itself.
Mhm.
And then you can just go on a spiral from there. So you're being counterproductive.
Yeah. Do you have any other pieces of advice for people who want to use belief to their advantage?
Um, what would it be? I'm trying to think of what's helped me over the past few years, and
Yeah.
um, writing things down has definitely helped me. Like
Mm.
I, I did buy a diary at one point, but I found that I needed to make it easy for myself. So I'd have this lovely diary. It looked all flash and everything, but I'd never actually use it. Whereas on the one hand, I don't want to be on my phone all the time because I think it's nice to actually interact with the real world. But at the same time, if we can use technology to our advantage, there's a notes section in my iPhone, and I've just have a journal in there that it's not every day, but when I do like to kind of write in there and get things out of my head, because when they're in your head, they're just getting bigger and bigger and circling, and
Mhm.
they will become your reality if you don't release
Mhm.
them.
Yeah.
Um, so I think journaling is a great way. And as I say, it doesn't have to be every day, but of
Yeah.
getting things out of your head. Um,
Mhm.
and it's the same as talking to a friend. Once you say something out loud, sometimes you can hear it and think, oh, actually, now I've heard it, now it's come out of my head. Then it has a bit less meaning, but also I
Yeah.
can hear it, and it doesn't feel quite how I thought it felt in there. But when we don't talk about things or don't, we are, I guess if we go back to energy, just keep things flowing. So, yeah, talk about it or if you haven't got anyone you want to talk about it straight away, then write about it or just running away from it doesn't ever help. I know that
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, I think another thing that is also really helpful, at least for me, has been meditation, but there's a specific meditation that I do. Tony Robbins has a meditation. It's on YouTube, and I'll put the link in the bio if you guys want to do it. But what the meditation is it starts off, you're priming yourself. So you're doing really intense breathing. So he starts off with breath work. You're going, and you're doing that. While you're doing that, you're pumping your arms. It's kind of silly, and you're like, what am I doing? But it's what the point of it is to get you out of your normal setting of like, maybe you're bummed out, so you're just kind of slumping, your body language is a certain way. But if you're like in a good posture, like I call it superhero posture, and your chest is puffed out and you're pumping your arms and you feel big and strong, and you're also doing this breathing and it's getting you out of your normal routine in the way you're feeling, then the next part he does gratitude, and not just gratitude as in I'm grateful for this and I'm grateful for that. It's like I'm feeling as if I was in that moment. He says like a roller coaster, like when you're right on the edge of the roller coaster and you're right about to go down the hill, that feeling where you like it awakens something inside of you. And you do gratitude, then you start sending out love to people. And then the last part is kind of manifesting in a way and saying, what do I want to achieve today? What do I want to do today? What is it going to feel like when I do this? I do that with my podcast. Whenever I do an episode, I sit down for a second and I write, what's it going to feel like when I finish this episode? I'm going to feel happy. I'm going to be connected with new people. I'm going to have friendships. I'm going to have all these things. And I feel what it's like at the end of the race. Like, whoa, what's it going to feel like? And it helps so much, at least in my life. And I recommend everyone out there to try it at least once, because it helps you connect with yourself and set good goals.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're kind of tapping into there, it felt like, is kind of going back to the energy thing, but you're changing your energy. You're kind of going, if I just sit here slumping, then I'm probably unlikely to have any kind of creative or different thoughts to the ones that I had a few minutes before. Whereas if I get up, stand up and change my posture, and your body the blood starts pumping, but you're changing your energy, and that in itself changes your ability to think. And then you can start reprogramming your mind, and that could lead on to let's let that lead on to number 3 for me, which is about your belief system. Really, I'd encourage people to talk to themselves. We do it on a daily basis anyway, and not necessarily out loud. There is a real value in saying things out loud or writing them down, but we're all pretty good at beating ourselves up and going, "Oh, you're an idiot. Why'd you do that?" Or "Don't do that. You probably can't do that. I don't think you can achieve that." But why don't we wake up every morning and go, "You know what? You are a powerful being. You can do anything you put your mind to. Some things are going to happen today. They might be a bit stressful, but you'll deal with it. Give yourself a break and go easy on yourself, and just remember that you've got this. Doesn't always look pretty, but you're doing the best you can." So just talk to yourself really nicely and pick yourself up. Be your own cheerleader, because most of the time, there's that phrase, isn't there, that if we treated our friends like we treat ourselves, then we'd have no friends, because we're horrible to ourselves. Improve that self-talk, because that self-talk is what becomes your belief system. And belief systems are changeable. But we can either do things by repetition, and Tony Robbins and Robin Sharma and so many other people talk about the power of repetition. And we can also do it by getting inspired and excited by things. But again, we need that repetition, because repetitions form habits, or they're installing a new habit. And we quite often find it, or I have, and I hope I'm not the only one in the world, I'm pretty sure I'm not, but we find it quite hard to form new habits. And why wouldn't we? Because half the time, I'm 42 as an example, say I've been learning habits since I was, let's say, 7. That's 35 years of habits to undo. It's not impossible, but it will take 2 or 3 months. You can't just expect to do one thing on a one day to change a new habit and then it fall into place. The next day, it's practice makes perfect. It's like looking at the physical, like playing golf or playing squash or snooker, whatever it is you do. You don't just suddenly become the best golfer in the world by just going, "Oh, I feel good, I'm going to hit the ball well." Well, you might do that. That's part of it, but you need to just practice. And we need to practice mental exercising of, I'm amazing and I can handle this, and put into practice mental habits every day and just keep practicing. But if we can do that in a nice way, then it's even better. I mean, some people like talking to themselves and beating themselves up a bit. And I think David Goggins does it. But there's almost a kind of healthiness to it, I think. I don't know too much about him, but it feels like there is. But as long as there's self-talk, you can motivate yourself with a bit of injection of, come on, you idiot, like, let's get on with it. And
sometimes you do just have to say, like, he calls himself Mother Effer, and that's his he'll be like, get out of bed, we're doing this, we're going, and it's like sometimes you need that, just kind of like kick yourself in the butt and be like, but not in like a bad way, but more in like a motivating way, like let's like hyping yourself up, like, let's go do this, come on, get out of bed, let's go. And I think there's a time and a place for that, for sure.
Absolutely, and it's tapping to our natural almost stress response. You have a stress response because it gets you out of trouble and it motivates you into action to move you forwards. We don't want to be in the stress response all the time, but if we can kind of give ourselves a bit of that self-talk every now and then, as you say, I fully believe that we need to be nice to ourselves all the time, but sometimes you just have to go, come on, mate, get your ass out of bed and sort this shit out. And you need to have a little stern word with yourself. Yeah, it's as simple as that.
I think Andrew Huberman said, when you talked about anxiety and stress and having a good relationship with anxiety or stress, sometimes we feel nervous and we view it negatively, being like, well, I feel nervous, I'm going to go into an interview, I'm going to go into whatever, and I feel stressed out. But it's actually, that's your body priming you, getting you ready to do this. It's that maybe adrenaline's pumping, maybe you're shaking a little bit. It's getting ready. It's hyping you up, getting ready to go. And instead of viewing it as, I'm anxious, this is a bad thing, and I'm going to fail, it's, I'm anxious, this is my body helping me out and preparing me to do something that maybe I feel like I'm not prepared to do, but it's preparing me. And viewing it like that switch that he told me was like, whoa, I don't need to be stressed out anymore when I do an interview. When I feel stressed, it's actually, I'm getting ready. It's my body telling me, hey, we're going to kill this. We're going to knock this out of the park. And that really has helped my view of that.
Absolutely. And it's at the heart of the Wim Hof method of, it's human. If we didn't have that kind of, if we didn't have a few nerves or a bit of anxiety, then our body would just go through life without even experiencing anything. But it's like things like the cold and breath work. Our body, we're prepping ourselves, getting our body prepared to kind of go into battle or just get prepared to tackle whatever it is up ahead. Absolutely. So stress hormones are released to kind of go, yeah, okay, something's happening, but we're ready for you. We've got you. We're here to support you. Yeah,
exactly. The last two questions I like to ask everyone, and I like to see it both as a reflection, and it's also a reflection on the past and a look in at the present. So the first question is a look into your present moment. What is the current lesson that you are being taught right now by life?
Probably the same one, a bit just to let go. Decide what you want to give energy to. You have that choice. What do I want to, like, let someone put a load of energy into something that happened that, someone might have said something to me that it came off the wrong way, and I put a load of meaning and energy into it and already created a story out of nothing. Just be careful with what I put my energy into. I have the choice to respond to it. So what do I need to let go of? And what do I need to give less energy to?
Yeah.
Or what do I give more energy to? I know that's three things there, but that's kind of, those are my things that I'm always mindful of at the moment. I need to let go of something and decide where I want to put my energy.
I love that. The next question is, if you could tell 18-year-old you one thing, what would you tell him?
Believe in yourself, but don't change. I know that sounds like a contradictory thing, but actually we are who we are. So just, maybe that's probably what I want to say. Just just be yourself.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard for a year or so if you start to kind of really be yourself. Because I think I've always been me, but I've only
Mhm.
had the confidence to properly be me over the past few years. So to the 18-year-old me, just be yourself, and it might take a little bit of time and it might be a bit painful, but in the long run and the short and medium run, it will actually work out fine.
Thank you so much for your wisdom, for being on the podcast, for giving us your time and letting us hear your amazing journey throughout life. For people out there who are excited and want to know more about you, where do you want to send them? Where should they go to find out more about you?
If they go to my website, because that has all, I'm in the process of kind of redoing it. So there's not too much on it, but it's got my social media links. So, and the
Awesome.
website is www.adaptandflow, spelling it so adaptandflow.co.uk. And then if you follow me on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook, then they can hear about my workshops. And there's so much crap on social media at the moment, and I think people like you and me, hopefully, if I can be so humble, I know that's going against me being humble, but my job is to, try and put things on social media that are going to help people, and that are really genuine. And sometimes it's me saying, just being authentic, and showing that I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. Sometimes I get scared. But generally, I'm a good guy trying to do the best thing, and we're really powerful beings.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling, and this is obviously, you and I can talk later, but almost feels like we've only touched on a few things in this episode, and we could go into the Wim Hof method and power of the mind and a lot more in the kind of follow up episode at some point.
I would love to have you on again. Of
Yeah,
course. Yes.
if you wanted to, then I'd love to do that as well. But
Yeah.
yeah. But
Alrighty. And the links for all of that, if you didn't catch the website or anything, that'll all be in the bio. So you can tap that and really make sure to check him out, because he is already changing the world, and he's only going to continue to change the world even more. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Bye.